We are good to go. The red light's off. The agenda, any additions or deletions? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Nagel, all those in favor? It's carried, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. Councillor McFadden? Yes? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Delegations. First delegation is request for tax penalty cancellation. Councillor Wilson, you have something to declare?
As this person is an acquaintance and friend of mine, I'll remove myself from this vote. I'll recuse myself on it.
Okay, thank you. We'll come get you when we're done. Did you wish to speak, or do you want me to? I'll continue on this one, correct? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Janang and council members. Cochrane resident at 6 Glen Summit Close has requested cancellation of property tax penalties of $419.72 that was incurred on his account for late payment. Tax penalties are applied according to bylaw 08/2008 consistently to all property tax accounts, and under the Municipal Government Act section 3471, only council has the authority to cancel or reduce the taxes. 2 penalties were applied to 6 Glen Summit Close property tax account, a July penalty of $195.87 and an October penalty of $223.85 for a total of $419.72. Administration is recommending option 1 that council decline the request for property tax cancellation, as this would enforce the bylaw that was applied fairly to all residents. If council were to waive the penalty, other taxpayers who were late and charge a penalty may expect similar concessions. The resident, I believe, is not present tonight. However, I understand that there's been submitted letter to speak to the request for tax penalty cancellation.
Okay, thank you. Was council, everybody got the letter today and had a chance to read it? Yeah? Okay, is there any questions of administration, or would someone like to put a motion on the floor? I can read the letter if everybody has not had a chance. We got it late this afternoon. Councillor McFadden, are you good to go? Yeah, okay. Councillor Flowers, you wish to make a motion?
I wish to make the recommended action that council decline the request for property tax cancellation. I don't believe that we need to start doing that, and we turned down the last person that came. And I think we should continue to keep it fair.
Okay, any further discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Those opposed? None? It's carried. Thank you. Grab Councillor Wilson. welcome back. Okay, you have another delegation.
Second one, yes. Cochrane resident Danielle Hassick has requested cancellation of property tax penalties of $566.98 that was incurred on his account for late payment. Tax penalties are applied according to bylaw 08/2008 consistently to all property tax accounts, and under Municipal Government Act Section 3471, only council has the authority to cancel or reduce the taxes. 2 penalties were applied to Mr. Hassick's property account, a July penalty of $264.59 and an October penalty of $302.39 for a total of $566.98. Administration is recommending option 1, council decline the request for property tax cancellation, as this would enforce the bylaw that was applied fairly to all residents. If council were to waive the penalty, other taxpayers who were late and charged a penalty may expect similar concessions. And I think I also understand that Mr. Hassick's not present tonight. However, he has submitted a letter to speak to his request regarding the tax penalty cancellation.
Okay, council, anyone like to make a motion? Is there any questions of administration? No? Councillor Wilson?
Just one, I apologize if it was asked while I was away. It seems like part of the contention here is at least alleged lack of notification from the 2 applicants. They were given letter mail on each occasion, I assume? Or
Yes.
I understand, yeah?
Yes.
Do we have any plans to go to or add email notification in the process?
We do that in the process. Unfortunately, in both these cases, we didn't have any email notification with either one of them. We send the letters out. We usually send between 3 to 4 reminders. And in this case, Mr. Hassick's, the mail had come back, but when we refer to our land titles documentation, which is where we get the addressing from, there was no change in addressing. We had no email to get a contact for him as well.
Those that we do have an email address for, we use that as well?
Yes, we would.
When we do have that? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems important to me these days, based on the fact that we just had a Canada Post strike as well, that perhaps email addresses would be appropriate.
Right. We do leave notification on it as well. The residents can sign up to log on, so that would be from any location to check their
Excellent.
accounts as well.
Excellent,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, good question. Would anyone like to put a motion on the floor? Councillor McFadden, thank you.
I'll move that council decline the request for property tax penalty cancellation on property tax roll 1629-700. Again, used to be consistent with policy and make sure that everyone is being treated fairly.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no debate, all those in favor of the motion? It's carried, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Cruising right into bylaws. Mr. Weldon, I believe we just had a public hearing similar to this topic,
Yes, we did.
if not the exact same topic. No one? It's like stoic in here tonight. You're dressed like an elf, and no one will laugh at my jokes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am now bringing bylaw 32, 2018 back to council tonight for your consideration for second and third reading. I'm going to go fairly quickly based on the public hearing being here tonight. That is a little bit out of the norm. We normally do not bring the bylaws for consideration for second and third reading on the same evening. But tonight, since this is more of a housekeeping type of issue, we thought that it had merit, and there are some applications that are depending on it as well. So. But again, the purpose of the bylaw tonight is to add street-oriented townhomes as a permitted use to the R3 district. The associated regulations include the lot areas, that are listed here on the screen, the lot widths. The one notably being the inside unit at 5.5 meters, and the minimum yard setbacks to the front yard for laned and laneless being at 4 and 6 meters respectively. The maximum height being 13 meters or 12 plus 1, depending on the adjacent lot, the height of the structure there. The density will be at the discretion of the Development Authority, and adding in the clause for the non-conforming lots that were created since 2013. Again, the public consultation through the circulation, there was no concerns through any of the committees and boards and the circulations that we have done, as well as the public hearing that was held earlier tonight. The recommendation is that Council gives second and third reading to Bylaw 32 2018 tonight. Thank you.
All right, is there any questions, Mr. Weldon? No? This is just cruising right through this tonight. Anybody have a motion they want to put on the floor? Councillor Flowers.
Can I do them both at the same time?
Uh,
Or do you do them separate?
Separate.
Okay. I would like to move second reading on bylaw 32, 2018.
Okay, any discussion? General housekeeping bylaw. Okay, all those in favor of second reading? Carried, thank you. Would you like to carry on with third reading?
Okay, I will move third reading on bylaw 32, 2018.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. You gonna stick with us? No?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Weldon. Good evening, Ms. Tomes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am presenting bylaw 33/2018 for its second and third reading this evening. So the purpose of this bylaw is to change the side yard setback, the minimum from in the R1 district from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters. In October of 2016, bylaw 26/2016 increased the side yard setbacks for dwellings in the R1 district from 1.2 to 1.5 meters in response to a notice of motion. The concept was based on the need to reinforce that new communities needed to maintain a unique appearance, feel, and character of Cochrane, and it was envisioned that an increase in the side yard setback would provide residents with increased privacy, improved streetscaping, and better capacity for on-street parking. At the time, there were also concerns brought forward regarding existing subdivision approvals, and thus there was a regulation added to have a start date of January 1st, 2017. Since the bylaw came into effect, no new subdivisions have been approved with the R1 land use redesignation, except for in precedence, which includes 8 lots in the first phase. Thus, the intended streetscape and neighborhood improvements that were envisioned are not coming to fruition. Through discussions with the development community, administration is proposing to change the setback to the original 1.2 meters. The proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies, including the Developer Liaison Group. Changing the setback to 1.2 is in alignment with the Alberta Building Code, provides options and flexibility in housing styles, built form, and increasing housing affordability in the Cochrane market. The principles and goals for Cochrane, which are derived from the community values and vision for Cochrane in the Municipal Development Plan, are to guide development and to provide a framework for decision-making bodies. Principle 1 is to employ responsible growth management, which demands that the town make every effort to meet the needs of a growing population in an ecologically aware and efficient manner, using limited natural, human, and built and financial resources. 2 of the goals in this principle include using our limited land base and infrastructure efficiently, as well as managing growth in a way that enables the town to provide and maintain public services. Section 8 of the MDP comprises of policies that apply to land use and development proposals, and generally these policies guide development for residential housing to meet a minimum residential density target, provide a variety of housing types, enhance consumer choice of residential dwellings, and encourage dwelling dwellings that are competitively priced, that they be developed in a compact, low-impact, cost-effective, and efficient form, as well as maximizing the utilization of existing infrastructure. The proposed bylaw responds to these policies by providing a variety of housing designs and encouraging consumer choice as well as cost-effective and efficient form of housing. This bylaw is simply considering the side yard setback of a single detached dwelling in the R1 district. These figures, as included in your report, include all of the other R1 regulations, which are the minimums that create the parameters of what an R1 lot can be. Lot width is at 9 meters. Lot area, minimum of 300 meters squared. Front and rear yard setbacks are 6 meters in the front when you have a front drive garage product, and 7.5 meters in the rear. Lot depth is provided only as an estimate minimum in order to meet lot area requirements. So the impact is that the side yard setback is the only variable changing. As previously described and illustrated, there is no material impact on street parking capacity. At 1.2 meters, it leaves 4.88 meters approximately in between garages and driveways for street parking, and this accommodates most typical cars, SUVs, and small trucks. An increase of 0.6 meters, an additional 1 foot for each property, is increased to 5.48 meters, but does not create additional parking along the street, nor accommodates those larger truck lengths. The additional space does not increase the total number of parking spaces in between the houses, nor does it lengthen the space to fit every vehicle type, and this also assumes that the lot width was adjusted instead of reducing the house footprint. So as was included in your public hearing council report, the bylaw went before Planning Commission, who were generally opposed to the proposal. They recommended researching best industry recommendations stemming from recent fire events, and they had concerns regarding livability and the feel of the community. During the public hearing, there were 6 landowner submissions by 7 individuals who were strongly in support of the proposal. There were discussions regarding street parking, fire safety, home design options, consumer choices, as well as housing affordability and amenity space. No comments opposing the bylaw were received during the public hearing. As fire safety was brought up in both instances, we did investigate if there was any statistical difference between 1.2 and 1.5 meters. And the answer comes back to the building code. Each setback distance and the corresponding requirements of that distance are designed to limit the spread of fire between urban homes and to ensure that 10-minute response time, whether it's 0 or 1.2 or 1.5 or more. So the bylaw in front of you tonight is simply considering the minimum side yard setback for single detached dwellings in the R1 district. This does not preclude landowners or home purchasers from increasing that setback as a choice, but by continuing to use the 1.5 meter setback as the minimum, the available building footprint is reduced while all the other minimum lot regulations and dimensions stay the same. Administration is recommending that council give second and third reading to bylaw 33/2018 this evening. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move second reading to bylaw 33/2018. As part of the council that had actually amended this, the intent at the time was heavily focused on that street parking aspect and, of course, creating bigger yards. And neither of those goals have come to fruition through this change. And so I certainly support the change back in that what it does allow is that greater flexibility in how the houses are placed on the lot and allows the developers and builders to create perhaps a more unique facing. And that's one of my goals for Cochrane, is that we be able to do something a little bit more creative. And even that little bit of space allows the builders to do that, but didn't achieve any of the goals we had about parking. And I think I think you're going to have a question about the fire code, so I'll leave that one for someone else. Anyhow, so I'm in support of this change back. I think it ensures that Cochrane remains competitive across the region.
Councillor Federico.
Thanks for the presentation. Do we actually have numbers on statistics for fire-related incidents between 1.2 to 1.5, or is it just pointed back to the building code?
Yeah, so through the chair, to answer your question, Councillor Vidago, we did contact the National Research Council that develops the building code, and they did not provide those statistics. They actually just pointed to the fact that that's how the building code is kind of set up, is so that all of those setbacks are statistically equal. So at 0, you use different materials and have different ratings and no windows and that sort of thing. At 1.2, it's statistically the same in that 10-minute response time. There's just different requirements at 1.2, and similar with 1.5, you're allowed to have more window coverage at that point. And kind of, there's a table in the building code, it kind of continues as the distances increase and more windows are allowed, and other changes are allowed as well. So that's kind of the answer that I was given by the National Research Council, as well as our internal fire and building codes departments.
I guess, I know that there's a motion on the floor, but I'm going to move that we move to option 2 and ask administration to invite Cochrane Fire Services to actually do a presentation with stats and risk factors in regards to fire-related incidents from shrinking the side yard setback. I have a couple concerns, and I guess, the information was brought forward now, but I did bring it up at CPC, and I did bring it up at first reading, and both times I wasn't really given any direct information as to stats, so that bothered me to begin with. But also, we have no secondary site on the books, no secondary hall for at least 8 years, and I know that maybe plans are working on in the background, but we have thousands of homes to be built, and we have the potential of a lot of houses coming closer together. And before I would give it the green light, and if I find out that it's A-okay and everybody gives it the thumbs up, then I'm fine to approve it, but I would like to hear that information straight from our own fire services, not necessarily looking at just a national guideline.
Further to that, was our fire department circulated with the bylaw? And
Absolutely.
could you
Mayor Chinook.
just repeat what they had gotten back to us on, please?
Well, at the time, there was no response from the fire department because the 1.2 is the industry standard, and the fire department builds their 10-minute, they make sure that all the subdivisions are within that 10-minute response time. And so as per the building code, as long as they can service those areas, that is what they will do. And they deem that an acceptable
Okay.
response time.
I understand where you're going with it. I just wonder what answers we would get back from our own fire department when we circulated them the first time with the bylaw.
Well, I'd actually like to hear numbers personally, like actual statistics, right? Not just an A-okay or not. And also because of the fact that, what other suggestions may they suggest going forward as we have thousands of homes coming on and no other plans as of now. I just think it's important to hear that from my side and actually hear the presentation personally than it is just presented.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Is that all your questions? Okay. Councillor Nagel?
I don't really like building high-density neighborhoods. I really want to do everything we can to build more spacious neighborhoods. It's a big part of the reason why I'm on council. So when it comes to a policy like this, for me, I think it's a step in the wrong direction. I really liked the spirit of increasing side yard setbacks. I know it's created a couple of bylaw problems. One, that just increasing the side yard setbacks without increasing the minimum lot width in a lot of cases can just result in a smaller house with more space in between the houses. So what I'd actually think would be an appropriate remedy is increasing the minimum lot width to match the 30-centimeter extra side yard setback. And then the second problem we run into is with this change, being that it was only added into R1, we only increased the setbacks in R1. It made R2 and R3 a lot more profitable, a lot more marketable, as we find a lot of developers are only interested in R2, R3, and they're not interested in R1. So what I'd actually like to do as a response to that issue is increase both the side yard setbacks and the minimum lot width for both R2, R3. So with a number of accompanying policy changes, I'd actually like to see us do the exact opposite of what this bylaw is intending. And then I'd also like to comment that with regards to the fire issue, if we do feel that there is a fire issue, it needs to be talked about with regards to R2 and R3 as well, not just R1. And statistics aside, I mean, common sense tells me that when you have houses closer together, it just is a higher fire risk. But, so yeah, I'll be voting against the motion.
Okay, Councillor Wilson?
Thanks for the presentation, Nicole. I was interested, I know we have a ongoing land use bylaw update that we're all eagerly awaiting. Why did we choose to take this as a separate item rather than have that be addressed as part of the land use bylaw? I'm curious if you can speak to that. And I guess also if I could then, could we just update when we expect the land use bylaw to be wrapping up? I know that's a date we've been given before, but it would be a good time to.
Right, sure. My primary concern is, so the National Building Code has indicated this is the proper minimum distance. The second thing that I'm concerned about is that we're not using this district. And so the single-family dwellings in the R1 district are not being as supported as the R2 and the R3. And my concern is that if we don't move this ahead, and this is the primary reason we're moving ahead, is that we don't think that we're in a competitive position relative to all the other communities that surround us. And we have indicated in our budget that we do want to be competitive and we do want to have a 4% growth. So we brought this forward because the development community is telling us that they need this. And so if we choose to move away from it, then we have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that as well.
I was also hoping we could hear why is this not part of the overall LUB process that's ongoing right now? Why did we decide to make it a separate item? Is my
Well,
curiosity.
because the development community is telling us it's a very competitive market and they need this to be brought forward right now.
Right now, okay. And do we have a date on, just the likely date of LUB coming back before council? From anybody in the planning department possibly?
Sorry, Councillor Wilson, can you repeat your question?
When can council expect to see the new land use bylaw brought before council? I've seen the timeline before and I remember it being next year sometime, but.
It's really towards the end of next year, early or spring 2020 is the timeline.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, well, I agree with the motion on the floor. I think moving back to 1.2, one of my questions, I guess, I was surprised that we'd actually moved away from 1.2 meters and that this would actually even something that had changed. When did we originally as a community put in place the 1.2 meter side yard setback in the first place? Is that even on the records? Was it, I believe it was early 90s or even 80s?
So to answer your question, Mayor Janung, the last three land use bylaws were the most recent in 2004. Then previously was 1999, and then previous to that was 1981. And of course, just like our current bylaw, it gets amended over time. So likely it was brought in as a result of the changing national building codes that were unrolled as they do. They come out a lot more frequently than the land use bylaw gets updated. However, I don't actually know the year that it came into effect, but I believe that you're right, it's about the early 90s because that's when we start seeing the compliances from that age kind of come in with those setbacks.
And I believe, if I'm correct, it was around the time that Glen Eagles came on stream. That was the first time I was made aware of 1.2 meters setbacks in side yards. And I think so we have an example in our community already that it's working well. And I'm not to say I'm not concerned about fire and the fire code and all of that. I think that we have to rely on our federal government for putting in a national fire code, and that the building materials that we're using as they get closer and closer together. I mean, we're talking about going zero lot line, so I hope that everybody is building with the right materials in those, and we have a bylaw in effect for that, and we have people that are checking on those buildings as they're being erected. So for me, I think I would like to remain competitive with other communities that we're basing our budget on 4% growth. We're in a downturn market already in the Calgary area. Even on our tour that we went on, we were given examples of how this market is softening. If we give homeowners and purchasers another reason not to choose Cochrane, I'm afraid that it will be something that we're going to have to turn around and go back to our existing taxpayer and say, we need to spread our budget over less people than what we planned, so taxes would go up even more. So for me, I think staying competitive, I think Okotoks does this already. Other communities similar to our size are doing this. It's not we're just going to become another city. I just think this is another option. And the lots are not getting smaller. It's the ability to be closer to the lot side yard, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So for that reason, I'd be in favor of your motion, Councillor McFadden. So seeing no other debate, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it is carried. I think we need a third reading. Councillor McFadden, you want to carry on?
Certainly, I'll move that council give third reading to bylaw 33, 2018.
All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Mr. Weldon, you're joining us again with some
I am.
textual land use bylaw amendment.
Just give me 1 second, I'm just gonna grab
Grab
the
your
signs.
huge
I'm gonna
sign.
grab the tiny sign. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Genung, members of council. I'm here to present to you Bylaw 35, 2018, which is a land use bylaw amendment, specifically to add the requirement for development notification signs for certain planning applications. And it's for your consideration tonight for second and third reading. Again, the background of this was a little over a year ago, council had expressed some concern about making the community aware of certain planning applications earlier on in the planning process. So at the time of application rather than at the time of after a decision has been made. This certainly aligned with council's strategic priority for improved community engagement activities and to bring greater transparency to development and planning proposals in general and decision making. So as a result, council did direct administration to explore the requirement for community notification for development proposals. As a result, we did bring forward Bylaw 6, 2018, which was our initial proposal, and the bylaw before you tonight is a refinement of that initial proposal. So what exactly is being proposed? It is the requirement for development notification signs specifically for development permits, infill subdivisions, and land use redesignations that are also known as rezonings. There are some exemptions that are being proposed as well. Those are displayed on the screen in front of you, and I will come back to this point a little bit later. It also is establishing the information to be included on the development notification signs, and you can see it on the signs in front of you here. But specifically, it's the contact information of the town of Cochrane, the civic address of the subject property, the legal address, the description of the proposed development, including the use that's being proposed in the case of a development permit, the town of Cochrane's file number. Sometimes we can also require a rendering of the proposed development if need be, and any other pertinent information that we would deem necessary that the community should know about. We also are establishing the size of the development notification signs. Specifically, it's basically an 8.5 by 11, which is 0.12 square meters, which is this size here, when the subject property is equal to or less than 500 square meters. This 500 square meters is basically the largest residential lot lot size, in Cochrane. So any residential application would require this 11 by 17. When the lots are, these for the non-residential developments and planning proposals for a non-residential bay or commercial retail unit, they would also be required to do the 11 by 17. Now, for the lot sizes between 501 square meters and 1 acre, which is 4,047 square meters, you are looking at this sign. I'll just grab it. And it's basically 2 feet by 2 feet. When you have a property that is greater than an acre in size, you're looking at the 4 foot by 4 foot, which is the size directly in front of you here. The location of the sign will be visible from a public road, and specifically it will be in front of the property adjacent to a public road and within 2 meters of the property line. The duration of the sign postings for the development permits, specifically, it will remain on the property for 30 days after the appeal period ends or 30 days after a decision from the SDAB. For infill subdivisions, the development notification sign shall remain on the subject property until a decision is made by the subdivision authority. And for land use redesignations or rezoning, they will remain on the property until 30 days after the bylaw has passed by council or the bylaw is defeated. And it'll be allowed to be taken down as soon as the bylaw is defeated. We needed to create some definitions for clarification for the development notification sign itself, as well as for infill. The public consultation, we did circulate the bylaw internally and to external agencies. No concerns were received. We did present this to the developer liaison group. They were supportive of the bylaw. The Cochrane Planning Commission was also supportive of the bylaw. However, they did want us to consider in that exceptions section, which here I'll get to again here in a second, to be at the discretion of the development authority. So not every exemption may be needed to be exempt, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is that they wanted to be sure that if a development that is listed in the exemptions, it may have an impact on the community, and therefore the community should be notified. They want that to be a possibility and not just a blanket exemption. The public hearing was held on November 26, 2018. And as a result of the information that we received from the Cochrane Planning Commission, is that we have 2 proposed changes. The first is that we are proposing to have the bylaw come into effect starting January 1, 2019. The reason for that is, since this is a new requirement for both the development community and for the community in general, that starting on January 1, 2019 makes sense. It's the start of a new year. It will also give us a bit of time to prepare some information on our website and help people understand what these orange signs are when they start popping up in the community. Now, touching on the exemptions, we are proposing a change to add that the exemptions for all of the development types that you see here to be exempt, but exempt with the discretion of the development authority to still require a development notification sign to be posted, depending on the significance of each of the development permit applications. The recommendation tonight is that council gives second reading to bylaw 35, 2018 as amended, and also give third reading to bylaw 35, 2018. I'd happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Councillor Reid.
I would move the second reading then for bylaw 35, 2018. This council has gone on record that it actively promotes engagement and transparency. And while this may appear to be a small measure or symbolic measure in that direction, I think that is part of council's goal, and so I support it. I did have one question though, Riley. Is there any need for a grandfathering clause in this with this bylaw?
Through you, Mayor Chinung, a grandfathering clause for some of the existing developments that may be in process?
Correct.
Yeah, no, a grandfathering clause isn't required. What will, so any application that's made up to December 31st will not require the notification, but as of January 1st, they will now, this bylaw will come into effect and it will be required. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, good question. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Riley. I also support option one for this, so we go ahead with second reading on it. Being on CPC, we've seen, for the last year that I've been on it, we've seen several examples where I think this would have been useful to let neighbors and surrounding stakeholders understand rezonings and the three categories that are listed there. I was just hoping, for the benefit of everybody in the room, you might be able to talk about what happens in a residential setting when somebody is doing a rezoning, they put one of these signs up, and if a neighbor or a stakeholder nearby has a problem with the rezoning, what steps can be taken at that point?
Sure.
That would be very interesting.
That's a really good question. I think I have an example of the sign up there. So what will happen in a residential area? This says notice of development. A change has been proposed for this site. So if the property is 500 square meters or less, a 11 by 17 sign will be posted in front of their property within 2 meters fronting a street. So that'll be likely adjacent a sidewalk, or sometimes it'll be adjacent the curb. Anybody who notices this sign are encouraged to be able to contact the town directly to find out more information. And there's a couple different ways. You can call the planning department, the phone number is listed. You can email us, or you can use your phone. You can see the QR code at the bottom. That's a funny square looking thing. You can actually open up the camera setting on your smartphone, and you just have to open up the setting and point it at the QR code. It'll take you directly to our development map, our online map on our website, to find out more information that way. We're also hoping that with the information on the sign, a bit of the project description and what's being proposed, that'll help people understand what is actually being proposed.
And so that's all great. I appreciate all of that. If it's a contentious item that the neighbor or stakeholder disagrees with, though, could you just quickly talk about what options are available?
No, for sure. Okay, yeah, excuse me. So, yes, so being aware of the proposed development, if there are concerns from the adjacent neighbors or the community in general, they can use the same notification methods and provide comments to the file manager or to the planning department. Those comments will then be included for the consideration of the decision. If it goes to Cochrane Planning Commission, those will be presented to the Cochrane Planning Commission. If they're presented for a rezoning, those will be brought to council for their consideration, and also at the subdivision stage as well. Yeah. So so their comments will not only be gathered, it'll become part of the actual file management process for that and brought forward to the decision makers.
Which is excellent in my opinion. Up until now, it's been if there's a contentious issue, especially if it's discovered after it goes ahead, because we didn't have this notification system before, it was, if I understand right, you had to pay a fee and have an actual hearing done to decide the course. I just wanted to hear about that quickly too, and if that's changed at all, or if that's still the same.
Sure. So, through Mayor Janung, yes, so the previous method of informing the public of our decisions remains unchanged. So I want to make that clear. What this is doing is it's making people aware that an application has been made on a parcel, whether for subdivision, whether for rezoning, or for a development permit. So, and by notifying people, it gives them the opportunity to provide input before a decision is made. Now, after a decision is made, you are correct. So, if it's a permitted use in the case of a development permit, there's really no opportunity for an appeal. But if it's a discretionary use or a variance, there is an opportunity. And so our method is we send a letter to the adjacent neighbors when there's a variance or for a discretionary use, and their only opportunity to, I guess, be able to change a decision or appeal that decision is to make an application and pay a fee and go to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. Now, that's just for the case for the development permits. For council, for a rezoning, it lets people know that a rezoning is happening on a property early on in the process, and to basically be aware that to get more information, and then like tonight at the public hearing, they would have an opportunity to come to council and provide input at the public hearing stage.
Okay, thank you very much. That clarifies it.
Okay.
Councillor Badeko.
Thanks, Randy. I absolutely love the idea. I think it's great. I think it'll clear up a lot of confusion out there. I do have one question. On the items under the ones that could have to go to the discretion of the development authority, when it says temporary sign, can you explain what temporary sign is? Because it seems kind of redundant to put up a temporary sign, to advertise a temporary sign.
Sure. Yep. That's a great comment. That's why we're proposing them to be exempt. Yeah. So a temporary sign is those signs that you see sometimes that are like have a stand that are adjacent to a road, and they have the movable letters and whatnot, usually advertising a sale or something like that. That's really what a temporary sign is, and they're up for usually no more than 30 days. So in those cases, we wouldn't require someone to put up a development notification sign for those types of sign. It doesn't make much sense. However, community identification sign, variances to the existing development, so this is through our compliance process, things like that may have an impact on the committee or on the community, we're saying is quite valid, and that we may require them to provide a development posting on their site to let people know.
Yeah, I agree with all of them. I would just take out the temporary sign. I think I'm not sure what we would ever use it for. It just seems like somebody might just use it to complain against somebody trying to put up a sign. So
right.
Maybe it'd be more of a hassle than leaving it in, but that would just be my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Weldon, very well done. I agree with all the comments tonight. Seeing no other debate, council, all in favor of second reading? Carried, thank you. Motion for third? Third reading? Okay, all those in favor of third reading? It is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will take a 5-minute recess. You guys can take your time and get your presentation ready, and you're back after these messages. Good to go. Mr. Murphy.
Good evening, Mayor Janung, members of council. We're here tonight to present the Tri-Site Concept Plan project for council's consideration. Sharing in the presenting duties tonight is Leighton Ginter from Urban Systems and 4 members of the Tri-Site Advisory Group. First up will be Kevin Furcus, followed by Jackie Shire, Art Norris, and then Emily Natras. So the advisory group, I'd like to start by recognizing the incredible contribution made by the advisory group. Their commitment to the project and to the public engagement process really was quite remarkable. The Tri-Site Concept Plan Community Advisory Group is Jill Bilodeau, Samantha Chrysantho, and I know I did that wrong, Samantha, sorry, Kevin Furcus, Jared Castle, Valerie McCracken, Emily Natras, Art Norris, Jackie Shire, Robin Usher, and Nicole Cops was our recording secretary. So chairing the committee was Councillor Susan Flowers, and it really was her leadership and passion for an inclusive process that was key to the success of the advisory group's mandate. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Leighton to take us to the next slides.
Okay, as Jerry said, we had a very active and engaged committee, and you'll recall as council you gave them a mandate to be champions of the process, to engage the community both informally and formally, and to be in the community, engaging with the public and listening and generating their own ideas and acting as a filter as well. But ultimately what you asked the committee to do was come up with a concept plan before the end of 2018, and that's exactly what they did. In fact, a ton of effort was put forward by this committee. You can see how many meetings we had, roughly 12 meetings, met with over 25 groups, 2 engagement sessions, formal engagement sessions, plus conversations with family, colleagues, informal sort of meet and greets around kitchen tables, resulted in probably more than 800 hours of committed time in the last 5 months, which is a significant contribution to the community. So what you'll recall is that we started this process in June and started by gathering as much input as we could on the 3 sites specifically and reaching out to the community. As I mentioned, we engaged a number of community groups. We invited more than 150 to participate. We heard from about 30 community groups specifically on their ideas for the future. We gathered that input. We took that input to the Ideas Roundup, which took place in September, to provide that feedback to the community and get a better handle from the community on what they were thinking and what was possible. So we generated scenarios. We tested scenarios through that process, which then allowed us to develop a concept plan that we revealed 2 weeks ago and had feedback again on that concept plan, and we're here tonight sharing a recommendation going forward. As I mentioned, significant engagement has been part of this process. We had 5 surveys that were run through the Let's Talk Cochrane website and had more than 560 responses, met with many community groups. We were in the community, which was, I know, something that you were keen on seeing happen, and so we were at farmers markets, we were at the rodeo, we were at trade shows, and then we had the two formal engagement events where we had more than 300 people participate and provide feedback and support. So at the very beginning of the process, what we did undertake was looking at the sites themselves and trying to understand how they currently function. And so there's the Fifth Avenue site, the Esso site, and the 1 acre site adjacent to the library. And so this is simply a graphic that we put together as a team based on a walking tour that we did to try to understand how those sites functioned, how they were accessed both as pedestrians and people in vehicles, whether there were views, what was the topography like, how could the topography influence the redevelopment potential of the site, were there any conflicts with utility corridors and infrastructure. That was all assessed up front, which then helped us develop development principles, which really formed the basis for us in advancing scenario development and contemplating the different ideas that had been shared with us. And so you can see that we had a number of principles that were contemplated, everything from preserving as much as possible the natural conditions of the site, ensuring that we improve connectivity through the process, that we reflect Cochrane's unique heritage as examples of development principles that helped us in generating scenarios. We also had evaluation criteria, which we worked through as a group, which we felt was really important. So many great ideas had been suggested to the group through the engagement process and the group themselves. We felt like we had to have a filter. We had to have evaluation criteria that we could assess what's going to make the most sense on each of these 3 sites. And so we identified things like recognizing that we didn't want to see any of the uses, the existing uses on these 3 sites displaced unless they had another opportunity or unless they had another location to move to. We also talked about the importance of having a strong rationale for being in the downtown. So uses that were being contemplated, we felt like it was important that they demonstrate a need to be in downtown. We also talked about potential funding sources, exploring that, as well as answering a demonstrated need within the community. Whatever the use was, is this something that is needed within the community, or there's the potential to meet a need within the community? So those were some of the things that we used as evaluation criteria to then look at this list, which was generated by the committee through the engagement process, listening to all the delegations and interested community groups. We had more than 70, 80 ideas, specific ideas that were shared with us. And so instead of just listing those ideas, we grouped them into 8 categories so that we could make sense of them. So you'll see that we had existing uses, recreation and outdoor community uses, visual and performing arts, housing, multi-purpose spaces, municipal support services, innovation hub, and social organizations and services. So we took these key themes or categories, and at the ideas roundup asked people to organize them for us and to group them based on color. Each of these circles represented one of those themes, and we had more than 60 different scenarios shared with us, which was tremendous, which made our work as a committee very challenging to work through all those different ideas that were suggested. But we took those 60 unique scenarios and we boiled them down to, ultimately down to a preferred scenario, which, as you can see in this image, largely, if we go from west to east, down on the lower bench in the Fifth Avenue site, you'll hear more about a Cochrane Central Park being a very active multi-purpose space down on the lower bench. Up top on the upper bench, we had 2 facilities that were being contemplated. On the north side, we talked about creating a social services sort of hub with senior center and youth center in combination with potential housing above. On the south side, we looked at creating an increased event center, a little bit larger event center that could host all kinds of activities, could be rented and leased with additional spaces that could be rented or leased by community groups, as well as the potential for other social organizations. Then on the 1 acre site adjacent to the library, we talked about expanding the library and integrating that with an innovation hub and a performing arts theater. And then across the street on the Esso site, we looked at having a town presence of some kind that could include a transit hub, whether that's regional or local. We also talked about maker space to support artists and potentially some, building off the creative hub that's being generated in this location and potentially accommodating some housing above that as well. So that was the guts of the scenario that we took and moved forward into concept. So Kevin's going to talk a little bit more about the Cochrane Central Park.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Cochrane Central Park encompasses green and open spaces on the majority of Fifth Ave. It emerged as an answer to requests from everybody throughout the whole community to accommodate more open spaces in town. Cochrane Central Park is one of the main unique components of the Tri-Site concept plan. Cochrane Central Park incorporates different types of outdoor spaces with the intent that it is to be easily accessible and used throughout the year as many of the residents and visitors to Cochrane as possible. Some uses contemplated: flexible rodeo grounds, plazas, places for people to gather, outdoor events, markets, outdoor amphitheaters, and seating for outdoor concerts and shows. Multi-use purpose sports areas for volleyball, basketball, splash parks, all sorts of stuff. Picnic areas, multi-use pathways, which we thought were very important, and additional open green spaces to accommodate passive activity and spontaneous use. As these guys mentioned earlier, we had an active and engaged group. We also had a pretty eclectic group, as far as I'm concerned, with a lot of people coming in with different biased opinions and such. One fundamental proponent, I know most of the councillors know where I'm involved with this, is Cochrane Central Park is the rodeo grounds. And through the process of this, my minds change quite a bit and stuff, but the whole idea is, at the ideas roundup, a lot of people, it was like 50-50, either get rid of it or keep it. So we tried to encompass it and make it multi-purpose to use it for different things. We can tear the dirt out, flood it in the winter, we can put sand on it, have an indoor volleyball tournament in the middle of the summer. I do something wrong? No. I'm nervous enough, okay?
Kevin, you're doing great.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's, transitional space is not without its challenges, and we need to look further into that, of moving dirt, moving ice, everything in that. But logistics is something to achieve down the road. It does achieve the goal of improving the usability of the park throughout the year while still accommodating the rodeo. I'm finished, Jackie. Your turn.
Get us to the right side. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. As you've heard from Leighton, we received a lot of public engagement on this, a lot. It was almost overwhelming. The sheer volume of suggestions, comments, and presentations left us with much to digest, to discuss, and to even debate. What you see here in our final concept is a product of many hours of careful thought and discussion. Please don't think that this was just thrown together. Every aspect of it has thought behind it. With this concept, we were able to integrate the majority of the uses presented to us over the past few months. This concept also focuses on maximizing public use and enjoyment of the sites by providing vibrant spaces and places to attract locals and visitors alike. Recognizing the value of the location, we added a moderate amount of mixed housing options close to the amenities and services. The eastern sites in particular are designed to establish venues that facilitate creativity, the advancement of the arts, and the encouragement of innovation. We are also hopeful that our vision can be a catalyst for the redevelopment of Railway Street and for business in that area. I'm really proud of this concept, and I know how much work went into it, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as we do. Leighton's going to put on the video because I don't think all of you were able to make it to the public reveal night. We all love the video. Not to be outdone by the bridge video, we had to have something to show you.
Was there theme music?
Yeah, there should be, hey? Oh, no, maybe Kevin will sing.
Not again.
So you have a view of the Cochrane Central Park idea with the natural amphitheater in the side there. The buildings don't have any windows in them, but obviously we would incorporate windows into there to take advantage. We've slowed it down a lot from what it was at the reveal. You can see the multi-use pathways, the senior center, and in there would be playgrounds and different areas for sports and picnicking and that sort of thing. And coming up around. So when you look at this, I'll just take a minute to go over the Fifth Avenue, the details on the Fifth Avenue site. This site is focused mainly on community uses and activities. We worked hard to consider the natural characteristics of this site and to preserve them. Two of the key features were, of course, the slope and the views. We heard many comments from people that had enjoyed the hot tub at the Big Hill Pool. Everybody remembers those views and they don't want to see them taken away from public access. To utilize the slope, you will notice we incorporated it into the amphitheater, seating at the flexible Rotary grounds, but also into the location of the buildings on the upper bench. These buildings will be slope adaptive, meaning they will be built to take advantage of the slope, similar to the idea of a walkout basement. This allows all levels to have windows that take advantage of the beautiful westerly views. We also chose to preserve the views by breaking up the buildings along Fifth Avenue. So when you're walking or driving down Fifth Avenue, you're not met by a solid wall of brick, but rather the buildings offer some spaces in between, some relief. So this allows public access to both the pathways and the views at both ends of the site and in the middle of the property. I don't think on the video it shows the pathway, we're considering linkage on the south end of the Fifth Avenue site from the upper bench down to the lower bench. You'll notice there's only 3 buildings total on the Fifth Avenue site. This concept allows for 2 buildings on the upper bench and 1 on the lower, leaving lots of open space for the Cochrane Central Park. We heard many people who were afraid that overdevelopment on the site would be detrimental to the downtown core. The south building on the upper bench would house the seniors recreational facility, or perhaps the seniors on the bow, the youth center, which we call the Boys and Girls Club, and the event center. These groups would benefit from sharing the large program spaces and the commercial kitchen, and they complement each other well. Please note that when you look at these slides, the buildings shown on the slides are proportionate to what the size use was suggested by the organizations when they presented to us. The north building on the upper bench would house social services such as FCSS, the Resource Center, and the Parent Link Center. In addition, space for other community organizations like Cultivate Cochrane or perhaps the Big Hill Haven would be a great complement. The upper floors of this building could be used for mixed housing, as it's an ideal location being close to amenities and services. Parking for these 3 to 5-story buildings on the upper bench would be mainly underground. However, depending on final design, there may be space for some on-site parking. The area on the lower bench to the north would be recommended for the location of seniors housing. This would be situated next to the quieter existing residential area and right next to the pathways available in Cochrane Central Park. The seniors would be able to enjoy this right outside their door, and putting them on the lower bench takes them off of Fifth Avenue, which can be quite busy with over 12,000 vehicles a day. Parking for this would be on-site surface parking, and parking for Cochrane Central Park events would also be on-site surface parking. And if you have any more questions, I will be taking them at the end. I think Art's going to give you a preview of the 2 easterly sites now.
Thank you. So we move over to Railway Avenue. Now, I know you've all have access to all the notes that we are referring to, so I'm going to give you just a guided tour. We're going to jump forward in time to when this is all built. So, however many years in the future, it's still a great town. Certainly the population has grown, but there are still lineups on Main Street for ice cream throughout the summer. So grab yourself an ice cream or maybe a latte. And here we go. Over to the corner of the hotel. And then you look left, you cross the street past the Chicken Lady, follow the sidewalk and pathway across the new level crossing across the railroad tracks. And here we are. The building and the layout of the plaza are designed and built to create an inviting gateway to this cluster of civic, cultural, and innovation facilities. It's in the link that we connect and unify the vibrant historic downtown with the dynamic newer section of the core of Cochrane. This is the hub of the town. We heard that word a lot in our consultations. This is where business, culture, and town services intersect and mingle. Now you'll see buses pulled up in dedicated lanes along the curb where the various transit routes intersect. You'll be able to get information, purchase tickets or passes at the Town of Cochrane satellite office at the top, we'll say. You will also be able to do business with the town that previously would have involved a trip up to the beautiful but awkwardly located ranch house. Now this might involve just paying for your dog license, or getting information about services in the town, or maybe meeting and working with the town's economic development officials as you plan to establish or expand your business. Now from here, cross the street and drop in on the expanded 21st Century Cochrane Public Library. Now, chances are you'll see me in there paying an overdue fine, returning some books. While I'm there, maybe I'm also editing my next article, Kickboxing for Seniors. As you're browsing the current bestsellers, you run into a neighbor who has just used one of the studios upstairs to edit the sound file for the local production of the Thornton Wilder play, Our Town, which is in technical rehearsals in the Performing Arts Theatre at the other end of the building. Now, as you walk with your neighbor down through the flexible shared space linking the library and the theatre lobby, he tells you all about the project that his daughter is working on with other ambitious young software developers upstairs in the ICC, the Innovation and Collaboration Center. She and her team are working with mentors from the Smart Cities Technical Advisory Team, which was instrumental in establishing the ICC way back in 2019 or 2020. So you say goodbye to your friend and you cross back to the north side of the railway street. Now, notice that you're experiencing this area all as one thing, not as one lot and two lots. We decided to do this because as we were talking about it, we realized that this is really one campus, one integrated hub. So here you are on the north side. Maybe you stop for coffee at the cafe, maybe check some messages on your phone, then you head inside to the building over there. There are studios all around. It's a beehive of activity. There's artists and designers working on all kinds of projects. There's a makerspace where high school students are working on the finishing touches of the pieces that they are about to install in the gallery space for a show that opens tomorrow. Now, one of the artists who lives upstairs above her studio is helping and advising them, just because she's there. She lives there and she's involved. So you check the time on your watch, head outside again, you wait beside the fountain that Jackie wants until your bus pulls in, and then you're on your way to your next meeting appointment, or maybe down to the rec center for a workout or a swim to work off the calories you got from the ice cream. There it is.
I'm not sure how I follow that up with parking, but we'll try.
You should have ended with that.
That's right. So we heard definitely loud and clear through the process, both real and perceived questions about parking and how we were going to accommodate parking given the significance and the scale of the redevelopment that was contemplated. And we recognized very early on, highly sensitive to that as a committee, that this was going to take a broad approach to parking to address this issue. So you can see up on the slide that and you would have heard from our committee members that we're taking a broad approach to parking where we'll look at everything from surface parking to underground parking, on-street parking, even considering shared parking agreements with adjacent landowners who may have excess parking that's underutilized at certain parts of the day that we can capitalize on depending on the uses that are occurring in each of these facilities, and perhaps even an off-site parking structure of some kind. And then, of course, with the implementation of transit, we recognize that there could be an influence and could actually reduce the amount of parking that's required for these sites. So we recognize that much more discussion needs to take place through the design process as we move forward and understand the programming needs of each facility. We recognize that parking is something that we'll need to think more about going forward. So as I mentioned, we did have the reveal. That was the end of November, where we had more than 150 people participating in the session. We asked a number of questions. In general, we heard very positive comments, very positive feedback, specifically about Cochrane Central Park and sort of the synergies available between having seniors and youth together, an expanded library. Those were some of the things that generated some attention. But we also heard that there's some challenges, and Kevin spoke to it, the transition between rodeo and other spaces and other activities. How does that work? And how do we do that? We also heard about parking. That was something that was commented on. But some of the things that people wanted to add or comments that they wanted to share with us, a definite desire to move forward and to advance these ideas and to ensure that community groups and youth continue to play a significant role through this process. So one of the recommendations that we wanted to make as a committee to council is we recognize, and I think Jackie referred to it, is that the shapes and the building forms that you see in this concept are reflective of what we've heard through the process, but we also recognize that they're going to change. As concepts get refined, as more detail work is done, those shapes will change, but we felt like it was important that we needed to establish some design principles that would guide this process going forward, and as new developments are contemplated, that they would try to achieve these kinds of things. So you'll see things like creating signature buildings that would set Cochrane apart, making sure that we maintain public views for everyone's benefit, that we capture and enhance Cochrane's unique sense of history and heritage, that we create spaces and buildings that are very active, where people can enjoy being in the downtown for all different kinds of reasons, all 4 seasons, all throughout the day and evening. And that was really a desire. And this whole notion of creating flexible spaces that adapt over time to the changing needs of a community, going forward. So those are some of the design principles that we felt were important as we move through this process, that we don't forget about what we're ultimately trying to achieve on the ground.
So, next steps. The Tri-Site Concept Plan is only the first of many steps in a long-term project. As the concept plan is refined, a finance strategy will be drafted to outline potential funding sources and funding mechanisms to be used to implement the plan. To accomplish this, administration will explore federal and provincial grant opportunities and reconnect with community and private sector groups to determine their status with respect to available funding. We feel it's necessary to establish a governance strategy for the facilities, any facilities that are built on the 3 sites, and also to determine priorities for the phasing and timing of the development of each of the sites, and complete a detailed design. And finally, in keeping with the spirit of the Tri-Site Advisory Group, ensure that any future public engagement is meaningful and continues throughout the process.
We would like to give a big thank you to the fellow Tri-Site Concept Plan Community Advisory Group members who tirelessly gave their time, energy, and ideas. Local community groups who contribute so much to this community and enthusiastically share their aspirations. Residents and community members who gave feedback and participated in the process. Members of council for their commitment to the process and challenging the advisory group to think big and questions asked along the way. As well as town staff, who drove the process, coordinated the team, and advanced our thinking. All of these individuals were instrumental in the development of the concept plan.
So that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions by myself or Urban Systems or anyone on the advisory group.
I thought you were bringing up a bottle of champagne to smash on the...
Sounds like it.
Well, that would be appropriate, I think. Thank you for your presentation. I felt like clapping, and I kind of do feel like clapping. Councillor Flowers.
I would like to move the recommended action that council accept the Tri-Site Concept Plan as information. And congratulations to everyone that participated in the presentation and all those that were on the committee. Hundreds of hours were put in, and these people really care about the community. They care about the future, and it really showed in their discussions and their planning process. So thank you so much.
Councillor Reid.
I'm uncertain if it's the results of a labor of love or of love of labor, but in either case, the results, I think, are tremendous. Congratulations to all those involved, and particularly Councillor Flowers for her passion in terms of being able to spearhead this through, and to the members of the committee. Once again, this is the result of embodies everything that this council has talked about in terms of public engagement and transparency and having a vision for the future. And so I'm really excited about this work, and as I say, I thank you all.
Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the group so very much for everybody's participation. This vision that's been put forward is transformational to what Cochrane could look like. And it's an exciting time to be able to do that. And I'm also super proud that as a community, this was a community-driven vision. This wasn't council coming up with a vision and putting it down onto everybody. This was something that the community came together. Even your presentation today was very balanced between all of your community members and your reps about what the joint vision is and how it's going, how everybody wants to experience it and the future for Cochrane. So I'm super excited by both the vision for this and by the fact that this was community created. And I think we make better government when we're listening to people and where you're part of the solutions. So thank you very much for all the work you've done. And I think my next question, of course, is what's next? How do we take the first step? So, Chair, I don't know if you're the one who helps us kind of decide what that might look like.
Through the chair, Councillor McFadden, we do have some next steps identified in the upcoming draft budget. If passed, there is some funding in there for detailed design. It is thought that there's some synergy between the Green Trip funding and us getting started on the Esso bulk station. But again, that would be determined through the next step and the next process.
Okay, well, I guess that just leaves me. Again, I would like to echo thank you to everyone that was involved. Councillor Flowers, awesome job. This was not a small task. We realize you did not throw this together, as Jackie said in the presentation. Very inclusive process. I think it was very well attended, obviously. Community spoke, well engaged. So everybody said all these things. But I really want to commend the commitment or the committee for a job well done. Thank you for stepping up for your community and to help produce a vision that all of us can rally around in years to come. So with that said, we, as Councillor McFadden has said, what is next? So not to diminish the work that you've done at all. I think that was a tremendous task that we levied upon you, and you grabbed the ring and you produced. So, and I'm super excited about the outcome of it. What people are saying to me around the community, I've not heard anything very negative at all, other than disbelief that the town of Cochrane can actually pull this off. So what I would like to see in our motion, and I have a question about this, is next steps you've outlined. We also have some money available in the budget draft at this point, coming up next in the agenda. What would be the timeline for administration to bring back a draft implementation plan? Could we include that in our motion? I would like, I think in the past, we as a community have had grandiose plans to do great things. This is one of them now. I would hate to see this sit on a shelf somewhere and gather dust, and I'm not saying that is what the plan is at all. I would just like to really, from our point of view, I think Council has made a very strong commitment to see this through in the first place this year. I would like to see us now continue on the momentum that you and your committee have created in the community. So what would be a, could we say, spring, mid-year 2019? Like I would like to put some parameters around when we would see something come back. Draft, of course. Mr. Devanna. No pressure.
I definitely would, administration wants to start on the phasing and implementation plan. That's definitely the next step. The sites are different. The Esso bulk station site, we have really some immediate requirements for, depending on how the budget decision goes, but for the transit hub and the Green Trip funding. And so I feel like 2019 will move forward in a significant way on the Esso bulk station site, at least part of it. So we're going to have to put together a implementation plan in the first quarter. of 2019, at least for that site. The site across the street for the library and the art center and the innovation center and all that, we really have to spend some time working with our partners, or potential partners, on what that site will look like, how it's going to be financed, who's going to be involved. But we can certainly lay out an implementation kind of phasing plan for that one. I feel that work could be accomplished maybe by May, as far as the plan for the site. And then that's the same with the Fifth Avenue site. We have a lot of partnership development that we need to do if we're going to develop that site as laid out. So for some of the seniors housing, we have to have some active discussions with the potential partners on building those sites. That one, at least the northern site on that property. And then, the art center or the event center, what's that going to look like? I see that as a bit of a longer term goal. So we're prepared to bring something forward for sure in the first quarter to get started on the SO, and in the second quarter to get a plan in place for the other two sites. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Okay.
It's definitely a high priority for senior administration to act on the plan.
Okay, and that's a lot of detail. I was thinking, could we zoom in on the three different lots, and then zoom in closer and do drafts?
Well,
for
I
each
think
of
your
the
motion
buildings?
just should include the administration bring back a phasing and implementation plan in the first half of the year, 2019. And then we'll bring it when we have it ready.
Okay, is that a friendly amendment? Councillor Flowers?
So I would include that we would have an implementation plan at mid-year, looking at phasing in.
A
First half
phasing and implementation plan
2019.
is the way I was phrasing it, yeah. So
What he said.
in early
Early
2019. Early 2019.
Thank you for that, and I do know that, I realize that administration is on board with all of this, and this is not something we're having to push through. We're all on board on this together. But while the focus has predominantly been on the transportation infrastructure, I do feel it's super important that we remain focused on community building, and this, to me, is exactly what that illustrates, is a desire to revitalize, to transform, as Councillor McFadden has said, our downtown core, to show the rest of the world that Cochrane is serious about being a tech incubator and an innovation hub, I'm going to use the word, and that Siri is now, must have said Siri or Sirius, that was what it was, yeah. And that Cochrane is on the map for the future. While we celebrate our heritage and the rodeo and the Central Park, we are serious about embracing the future. So I think that all of these projects have such a huge importance as we move forward as a community. And even in fact today I was interviewed by a magazine that is interviewing us as a potential community to be included in their magazine with however many million readers, and they are looking for Alberta communities that want to grow and be a part of the future. So how are we going to be, what are we building? What events do we have in our community? And I was going through a list. I talked to this person for 45 minutes about how awesome Cochrane is and what we're working on in the future. And I'm pretty sure, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm pretty sure we will be highlighted in this magazine in coming months. So we asked you to dream. You've dreamt, and now it's the responsibility is squarely on our shoulders to come through. And I think until we, as a community, push that first domino down and start the effect of each of these buildings starting to come into fruition, I think the community is going to remain apprehensive but optimistic is my hope. So the vision of Cochrane has been laid before us, so I'm super excited about this. Thank you, guys. With that being said, we have a information and implementation draft plan on the floor. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Forge ahead. 2 minute? Okay. We'll take a 2-minute recess and let the committee vacate if they wish. I'd like to eat the rest of my supper.
Oh, thanks.
Is this thing on? It was a big deal. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Ms. Knight, you have some legislative services for us?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I have a couple of agenda items for you this evening that tie directly to your committees. The first one is the annual committee review that we do. Unfortunately, this was supposed to come a little earlier this year prior to your organizational meeting, but we had some resourcing issues in Ledge Services, so we got it a little bit later. The bulk of your committees have not requested any changes to their terms of reference. This review generally requires me to either attend some of the meetings or work with the administrative rep and the chairperson on the committee via email to discuss any changes that they may want. The only committee coming forward at this time wanting any changes to their terms of reference was the
FCSS?
Yes, Family and Community Support Services Advisory Board. They had quite an extensive review working with all of their committee members to go through their terms of reference for the year and felt that it needed a fairly big overhaul for the year. So in your package, you will find the red line version of that, as well as the clean version with all of the changes that's a bit easier to read. I know there is some additional suggestions that perhaps FCSS will change the regularity of their meetings to be quarterly and at the call of the chair. That is still being determined. That doesn't fall within the terms of reference, so the committee itself will determine those changes. A significant shift for FCSS was a lot of their work revolves around the funding that they provide as well as the United Way. So they wanted to make their terms of reference more reflective of what they're actually doing with that committee. All of your other committees, none of the legislation had changed. We did make one change earlier, I believe last year, to the Subdivision Development Appeal Board. There was no additional legislative changes that were required there, or Assessment Review Board. And the Planning Commission, I went and met with them directly, and they were happy with what their terms of reference currently has. So what administration is recommending for this evening is that Council amends Schedule C of the Town of Cochrane Procedural Bylaw 01-2011 by amending the terms of reference for the Family and Community Support Services Advisory Board. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor Flowers, you have a motion?
Oh.
Or a question?
I have a question.
Okay, fire away.
So is it common to put something in like the title of the Cochrane Cares Survey? Or would it be better just to talk broadly about taking into consideration all the surveys and pertinent information?
Through the chair to Councillor Flowers, this was specifically added by the administrative rep for FCSS. Is certainly something that council could take out and make it a more general reference if you like.
just seems that it'll have to be changed again as soon as there's another one done with the new title.
Potentially, yes.
I would rather see it taken out.
What are you asking for specifically, sorry?
So it mentions the title of the recent survey, but it's almost 2 years old already. So there might be another survey done, and then it's just needs to be updated again then. So if you just talk generally about using surveys rather than naming them.
Is that something, Ms. Knight, that would be common, easy practice?
To change the name of the
Just-
titling, or we can just
just
remove
take
that,
out-
that specific reference
Yeah.
to this terms of reference?
And just say surveys?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay.
The other question was about the title. I know that Family and Community Support Services is bigger than just FCSS, especially now with the new rec area. And I know that they're not keen on this title with social planning, but hopefully it'll be looked at in the new year and they can come up with a new title.
Yeah, we did discuss that through the chair to Councillor Flowers, that they removed the social planning piece from the titling this year and felt that this was essentially more reflective at this time. But again, we will come back to this again next year, most likely in September, and review these terms of reference again once they've sort of had a chance to go through them. They're also waiting for this terms of reference to be approved to do their recruiting, because they do have some vacancies within FCSS, and they wanted council to support these changes so that when they're recruiting within accurate terms of reference.
Okay. Any other questions before I ask for a motion? No? I'll ask for a motion. Anyone? Councillor Flowers?
I'll move to accept the updated terms of reference with taking out the title of Cochrane Cares.
As amended, yes,
As
ma'am.
amended, okay. So council amends Schedule C of the Town of Cochrane Procedural Bylaw 01-2011 by amending the terms of reference for that one? Yeah. Yeah, as amended. All those in favor? It's carried, thank you. Committee appointments to public at large, or public at large appointments. Better way to say it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's time for our fall recruiting. So we have several committees that had vacancies at the end of this year, either due to terms expiring or folks leaving the committees. And we did an extensive amount of recruiting to get some folks on board. We did have some challenges this year in getting enough volunteers for some of these boards. So we did not receive any applications for the Cochrane Library Board, despite there's actually 3 vacancies, 2 that are non-voting youth members. And so we would encourage anyone, any of the youth in the community who want to get involved to do some applying. We will be doing additional recruiting in the new year to try to fill these vacancies. The Planning Commission does have 1 vacancy, and 4 applications received. FCSS has 3 public at-large vacancies. We will begin recruiting that in the new year now with the new terms of reference that you approved this evening. And the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board had 3 public at-large vacancies as well. And these were due to terms expiring and 1 member not wanting to continue on the committee, found that he had no time. So the applications were provided to council privately due to FOIP, and it would be administration's recommendation that council consider going in camera to discuss the applications themselves.
Okay, can I get a motion to go on camera? Councillor Nagel, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Back in 5.
Thankfully, I should show. Sure. All I was doing was shooting it to the top of my mouth and I went back. Well, my stomach. I was gonna say, still locked out. You know, a lot of times that's the reverse step. Yeah. I thought IT was on call for you. Isn't there an IT person in the building right now? There's an IT. Is it Murray? I have no idea. What's the guess? What's yeah. Do you send an help desk? Oh, Drew is smaller than you can get.
There was one night that it was council and it was snowing. And it was black. I'm like, okay, this isn't working.
How's your
The new ones are, the new one, the old one. The new one. First floor, Friday, the walls not on the second floor. They're framing the inside of the second floor. The sheet is clear, trusses in it. It's not a crowd, and then they could slow down.
The odd case of beer doesn't occur here.
I was trying to, but I don't have no.
Secret Valley. We'll take a break now and get back on. Yeah, can you see our secret? Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break to get online and tally vote. Well, the first one's transit, so that's. Next one is, the budget. So that's number 2. And then the rest are all vacancies. So it's really broken into 3. Where was he on? So number 2. Answer your question. My wife.
That's the New York cool guys. That's a Subway food. That's right.
There's, can you can, will it work? Yeah, there you go.
Whoops. Are we streaming again now? Okay, so we're going to proceed without the live streaming portion. So this will be recorded, but not live at the moment. So-
We are, there was a glitch within the iCompass system that it completed the recording while we were in camera, which means you can't now restart the recording to where it live streams links to the agenda. So I have created another event. It is recording right now, and we will work with iCompass tomorrow to get it linking back to the agenda for this second half of the meeting. But we do have the recording started, and it is recording. Council has voted on the public at large members. And I will need a motion to appoint Linda Gale and Stuart Ray to the Assessment Review Board, Deborah Spence to the Cochrane Planning Commission, and David Helmer, Scott Shannon, and Doug Townsend to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board.
Okay. Individual motions or all three?
One motion
together?
for all appointments
Okay.
will be fine.
Perfect. Councillor Reid? Councillor Wilson?
So move the stated appointments to the public committees.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Carried, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Okay, you need to, before you begin the budget, I need you to say your last name again for me. Cam
Van Kynpema.
Van Kynpema.
Yes.
Can't promise I'll get it right next time, but I'm getting better.
That's okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Is
Thank you very
Van Kynpema.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor Janang, members of council. I'm before you this evening to present, hopefully for the last time, a presentation of the 2019 through 2021 budgets. There it is. So as part of the report, there are 6 recommendations. One of them is to approve the transit budget as presented. The reason to pull that out is that it includes the car taxi program, and I understand there's a conflict of interest, so it needs to be voted on separately. My recommendation is that you allow me to give my presentation about the budget as a whole, and then when we move into the recommendations, then Councillor Wilson, if you would like to excuse yourself, would that work, Mayor Janang, as a procedure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I won't read them all out. We'll get to that. So when we were preparing the budget, we had a set of guiding principles that were used that came from council. So we made sure that we were considering your strategic priorities, the policies and the direction that you had previously provided to us, and that we were making sure that we're maintaining the services that everyone loves and appreciates, that we were managing growth. Cochrane's growing quickly, and that's something that's foremost in our minds to make sure that we are cognizant of. And we also, Mr. Devanna had spoken to you a lot about the infrastructure gap and the necessity to increase reserve contributions to try and put money away in our savings account so that we can start etching away and making that gap a little bit smaller. So those are the principles that were used to guide the process. We were also very cognizant of council's priorities. So there's priorities in community connectivity, development, engagement, facilities and services. And I just want to assure council that the budget does include initiatives that do focus in all 4 of these areas. As well, the capital budget includes numerous projects to address council priorities, such as roads projects on Centre Avenue, the bridge across the Bow River, and Mr. Deans assures me that the bridge actually doesn't look like that gentleman stretching himself across the way. Multimodal transportation projects, which would include transit, pedestrian pathways, as well as crossings. A new RCMP detachment, some ongoing fleet replacements in many different departments, ongoing water and wastewater upgrades, as well as a potential arts, culture, innovation, and library, rumor has it perhaps on a tri-site. So what are the anticipated tax increases? So in 2019, 2020, and 2021, if you consider that a 1% tax increase in 2019 is just over $257,000, when we first brought the budget for council's consideration on November 15th and 16th, We had an initial gross tax increase of 7.6%, net of a estimated 4% growth. We started out at an initial tax increase of 3.6%. Council sharpened its pencils and had recommended that we recognize in the budget a savings that we were able to negotiate under the natural gas contract. As well, Council had directed administration to drop the tax increase to fund the infrastructure gap from a 2% increase to a 1.5% increase. That reduced the 2019 tax increase to 2.98%, and then the fallout of those results in a 3.7 in 2020 and a 3.0 in 2021. So that's what the budget before you this evening, the operational budget, includes. It also includes utility rates and other service fees, and those are reflected in the projected revenue amounts in the budget. These include fees and rates for the water, wastewater, waste management, and those are ones that are passed by bylaw, and those are the 3 of the 6 resolutions we're seeking council's approval for this evening. And then the other service fees are charged and they are passed by resolution, and the budget does assume that those service fees would be approved by council and the resulting revenue is in those budgets. So what's the impact on the average home? So in 2018, the assessed value of the average home in Cochrane was just over $481,000. When you consider what the total municipal tax increase of 2.98% would be, the water bill increase, the sewer bill increase, the storm sewer fees, the waste and recycling collection fees, and then just of note, the Eco Center fees are not being proposed to increase. When you add those all up and you look at it on a monthly basis, it would be $8.95 per month for the average household. That's utilities and taxes. Which brings us back to the recommendations. The first one being the transit, then adopting the budget excluding transit, then the 3 bylaws for the utility rates, and then the last one, a resolution for the service fee rates. That concludes my presentation, and I'd welcome any questions that council might have.
Okay. Do we want to proceed with questions on the entire budget or get into the transit debate first? Okay, all right. Questions?
Yeah, just the utility, or the tax and utility summary, can you pull that back up again? So this looks different than the last one that I thought was available to us.
Yeah, that's because during the budget deliberations, council had asked for the natural gas to be adjusted as well as the infrastructure gap tax increase. So that impact the calculation of the annual or the monthly increase.
So so to be clear then, the total municipal taxes in the copy that I have, under the annual increase, it was $78.94, but on the chart it's $64.29. Where does the gas then come into that?
So the total municipal taxes, the annual increase is $65.29, and that's after taking out the natural gas adjustment as well as the infrastructure gap reduction.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted that clear.
It went down from your,
Yeah.
So that was through the deliberations we had?
That's
and
correct.
this is the chart that reflects those deliberations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions outside of transit to the budget? No? Okay. Thank you.
Would you like me to wait until we have questions on transit?
Yeah. Yeah, that's, we'll let Councillor Wilson. Yeah, that's why I'm like kind of deer in the headlights here. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So we need a motion for transit budget as presented. Councillor Flowers.
That council adopt the 2019 to 2012 transit budget as presented. And I just want to say this is the final step towards transit in Cochrane. It's pretty exciting Thank you to our supporters that have come out meeting after meeting to see transit move forward. We know that it's going to be life-changing for a lot of people, and I am thoroughly excited about it.
And it was 2021.
What did I say?
No, it's written in our package 2012, but is it?
Oh.
Yeah, it's 2021, that's
Yeah.
not on.
Okay, that's up there. Okay. Any other debate? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's carried. We'll grab Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Yeah, he thought we were going to be here a while, probably. We'll give him a minute. Two minutes? No, we've talked about the budget a lot, so. No one's gonna watch this. Yeah. All they did was wait around all meeting and. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Welcome back. Short and sweet. Moving on to the portion of the budget excluding the transit budget as presented. Can I get a motion for that? Councillor McFadden.
I'll move that council adopt the 2019-2021 budget, excluding the transit budget as presented. I think overall the budget does a great job of preparing Cochrane for growth and transforming our community as we move ahead and really take control of what that looks like and create a really visionary Cochrane. So I'm really excited about this budget. I think it did some really great things in mapping out our future.
Okay. Councillor Nagel.
I'll keep my comments very brief, as we did spend 2 entire days discussing the budget at great length. But you know, there is a lot of value in the budget, but at the end of the day, for me, I'm not happy with the tax rate that we are taking this year and in future years, so I won't be supporting the budget at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I've got a bit of a prepared one. Alberta's unemployment rate fell by a full percentage point this November to 6.3, reported by Stats Canada last Friday. This is the largest dip in more than a decade, considering our downtrodden economic climate and amount of families in Cochrane feeling the effects of this economy, including those who have taken a pay cut, have been laid off, or are still unemployed. I've spoken to lots of local residents and families that are struggling to make ends meet now. I cannot vote to increase taxes by 2.98%, or 108 per year in 2018, and ask families to pay more taxes. I also think we see concerning increases expected for 2020 and 2021. Personally, I don't feel as though we as a council did enough to consider areas that we could trim or make changes to save costs, and further, we only see our government growing in excess in size and scope relative to our population. At this time, I do not feel that there is an overwhelming benefit to the community as a whole in Cochrane to justify this tax increase. Tonight, I'm presenting a NOM, and that in future years, I'd like to see contested budget items be presented, formally voted upon and recorded for the public record to promote full transparency and accountability regarding budget deliberations. I would like to say that I did like the way that we did do budget this year. I just think there should have been more of a vote at the end with our contested items is my only beef there. For these reasons, I won't be supporting the proposed budget either before us tonight. Mouthful.
All right. Councillor Fedayko.
I guess this goes back to the councillors. If you could decide to take something out, what would you look at taking out to save money?
Councillor Nagel.
This one is transit, which I don't think we're supposed to discuss while Councillor Wilson is here. But I mean, that is the driving force behind the tax increase. There were a number of other small items that I did propose during the budget deliberation. Off the top of my head, I do remember the survey definitely being one of them. But for me, the trans is the big one, and then everything that I listed during our 2-day discussion.
Mr. Wilson?
And for me, I had 4 points I brought up during the council discussions. I can't speak to transit, so my 4 points were library, FCSS, our own pay, and infrastructure gap fund. We went over them quite a bit. I don't mean to backtrack to where we've already been, but they were brought up in budget, and I still remain convinced of my opinions from budget, just as a reminder.
Any more comments, Councillor Padeco? No? Okay. No one else? I have a small prepared comment. This budget allows us to continue, I believe, to invest in our community, save for the future while providing an on-demand transit system. And I also believe that this budget respects the economic reality of our community while still positioning Cochrane for the future. So I do agree with the process that we took. I think we've debated it at length, and now Councillor McFadden and Councillor Reid want to weigh in as well. So while tax increases are always hard to swallow, I do believe that we're doing the prudent thing this year by investing in our future and providing a new service that's exciting, that we talked about already. And again, the vision for the future is not something that we can just, that it's going to cost something. So saving now or pay later. So that is what I think we should be doing. So I'm in favor of the budget. Councillor McFadden?
The one thing I did want to say, and I understand it's always difficult, and especially when it's tough financial times and we're seeing a lot of economic crisis in Alberta, but so it's always tough to vote for any type of a tax increase, and I'd always prefer to get everything for nothing as well. But a vote against this is actually a vote against the 10-year financial strategy as well, which the key element that I think that we all come together on is traffic management and those infrastructure projects. And so within these budgets, we're looking at over $60 million in transportation projects through to 2021 that's now being voted against. And so I think you have to put that balance in between being a tax fighter and actually investing in your community and then fulfilling those campaign promises that we said we wanted to do, which was to tackle in a forward-looking way traffic management. So that's just one of the things why I want to flag that a vote against this budget is actually a vote against transportation solutions.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, I think I've defined my position on transit, right? My concerns were purely financial. I made it absolutely clear that I'm totally sympathetic to all the arguments that I made on transit and the rationale for it. I fully understand, appreciate, and sincerely accept the transit concerns. My concerns are totally financial, and so I appreciate the fact that the burden that this will place on taxpayers is not one, in terms of transit, that I support. I guess part of my concern is, while we're required by law, I think, to present a 3-year budget, I'm hoping that what we're looking at is really just approving this. Well, we might be approving a 3-year budget that we're going to be reviewing that next year again, and then the following year, because I do have some concerns about continued burdens that transit and other things will place on the taxpayers of Cochrane. But having been through that process, if you were to take transit out of this increase, it really is marginal, and it does achieve a number of the things that I hope for. And the last thing I would say is I don't want to lose sight of Councillor Wilson's, is it going to be a notice of motion? Yeah. Notice of motion that's coming up, because I support that. I think we should be able to individually vote on those lines and have our votes recorded. So, but overall, I'm in support of this budget.
Councillor Padeco?
I just had one comment to make, and believe me, when I asked for feedback, I got a ton of feedback. In regards to salary, I'm not going to be taking my increase for myself, but this might go back to administration, you're going to probably think I'm crazy, but I'd like to take my amount that I would have been given and offset the mayor's amount that he would technically lose. I think just in my own transparency, I don't necessarily feel comfortable in taking the salary increase. I'd rather wait for the remuneration committee to come forward. But in the meantime, I don't think that you should be penalized as heavily as what you would be. So I just wanted to make that public, that I'm not going to be taking it for myself, but I would like that money to slide over.
Okay, I guess just a point of clarification that if a vote in favor of the budget, there is not a decrease. Our salaries would remain the same. The take-home pay remains the same, so there would be no change. So you're saying you would not take that portion?
Yeah, I don't want the portion.
Okay, I'm not sure how administratively, how we deal with that. I mean, you could.
Administratively, the budget passes.
It just goes through.
We will be increasing everything in accordance with the budget. If a councillor chooses to donate that money for some other purpose, that's their choice.
Okay. All right.
Does that satisfy your?
Yeah, I just don't feel comfortable in taking it. I think that I've heard lots of feedback from the community that now is not the time. And you know what, I think it's all going to be looked at anyways, and so I'd rather wait till that recommendation personally comes up and have a committee to decide than going through the budget.
Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, like I said, via email as well as in our budget deliberations, I'm supportive of the spirit of what Councillor Fadego is talking about. While the increase to our salaries isn't is like nothing in the budget, it's barely even a drop in the bucket, but it's just the message that we're sending that I've never been totally comfortable with, and that is that everybody else's taxes are going to go up, and they can just deal with it on their own accord, and then we are offsetting our own tax increase with that tax, with other people's tax dollars, and it just doesn't sit right with me. But you know, what I would like to do is just put the whole thing off. Maybe just give us a COLA for this year, which is like standard, and then put it all off to an independent committee and have an independent committee decide on our salaries, and then just adopt whatever is recommended. That is what I proposed in the council, in the deliberations, and if anybody wanted to move that as part of our budget decision today, I'd certainly be supportive of it.
Councillor Wilson?
I thought it might be useful to quickly address Councillor McFadden's comments. Somebody that I definitely respect her leadership amongst our team. I would add that I'm very proud of our current capital budget list. My vote against is more of a blanket protest of certain things that I thought could have been done better in the budget process itself. But I guess I can also say my gratitude to the staff, the administration, who I think presented us with a pretty good budget. I was just disappointed that we couldn't find more cuts to it, is what it comes down to. Our long-term capital list, however, I couldn't be more proud of, as well as our council priorities. So I would respectfully disagree that my no vote is a note to our capital project plans.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No? So the motion on the floor is to adopt the 2019-2021 budget, excluding transit, as presented. Councillor Nagel.
Would we be able to separate out the salary decision from this vote, so we can have a separate decision on the salary thing, if there's interest in revisiting it? I mean, I think mathematically looking at the votes, I think there is interest in changing it, and we could even split out council salary versus mayor's salary. What do you guys think?
Mr. Devanna?
You can make a motion. You could make a motion to amend the budget for the 35,000 and see if that passes. You don't really have to separate it out to do that, in my view. If you want to not have a tax, increase for the council and of 35 grand, then make amending motion to the main motion. And then you have to vote on the amending motion, and then if it fails, then you go back to the original motion.
I assume you'll make that amendment, Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, I'm just thinking exactly how to word the motion that I need to bring forward here, because I came into this meeting today not at all prepared to change our salaries thing, only because I thought, based on previous discussions, that it was a closed decision already. I guess the language of the motion would be, I move that we amend the 2019, 2020, 2021 Town of Cochrane budget so that the council and mayor salaries are only reflective of cost of living adjustments. Would that be the appropriate language for a motion?
I think that captures it.
Well, I understand what you want to do. You want to remove the increase in pay for the tax exemption portion, so.
Correct.
That's 35,000, we estimate.
Correct.
So you can make that amending motion, and then you guys can vote on the amending motion, and if it passes or fails, we'll go from there.
So we'd vote on the amendment first,
Yeah,
then
you vote
on the main
amendment
motion.
first.
Yeah.
Sure. So then I move that that we amend the 2019, 2020, 2021 Town of Cochrane budget to remove the council and mayor salary adjustments that were made in response to legislative changes in the federal government.
Okay. Any conversation on that? None? Well, I have a couple comments. I didn't want to really get bogged down in this, but I feel like as a former chair of the Council Remuneration Committee, actually the last time that the committee was convened, it was an overriding element of that committee's decision that our council in particular has fallen behind other communities and the rate of pay given to a councillor. So that was why that committee and myself actually stood in front of the former council to recommend an increase in pay at that time to try and bridge the gap of other communities and what our specifically councillors were paid. The mayor's salary was deemed to be adequate at that time. Since then, so I think that's where the 2.5% per year is coming from for council's increase, not affecting the mayor's salary. Then during the last couple of months, or actually this has not been a surprise, we've known this since the beginning of the year, polling other communities across Alberta, I think there's none that are not doing this in their budget. And going across Canada, I believe every single community will be faced with the same decision. I'm not sure what the outcome will be, but from what I'm hearing through FCM and AUMA, that every other community is doing this. So if our council were to vote today to amend this to exclude matching the salary to the 1/3 tax exemption, that this council will fall even further behind. So we are basically, by taking this out, yes, it looks bad, yes, people can take it for what it's worth. It's been called a salary raise or an increase to pay, and I think people are upset about the way that that sounds. But at the same time, I think that if we're going to vote to basically pass this on to the next council or to us in 6 months to make another tough decision to raise pay for all of us to help climb back to close to what other communities are paying their elected officials, then I think it's a mistake on our part. So it won't be popular with some. I'm prepared to walk out on the main street of Cochrane and defend what decisions that we're making, and that is why I think we should be voting against this amendment today. Councillor McFadden.
Yes, thank you. I'll also vote against the amendment. I think it's been falsely positioned that it's council giving themselves a raise, and it's through the change in the federal legislation that portion of our salary that was tax exempt, which was a tool that many municipalities used for years to offset how you would remunerate your council, that tool is no longer available, and this is hitting municipalities across the country. And so if the impact, it's not an insignificant impact, and the work of this council has certainly grown in the 10 years that I've been on this. The work of the council has grown substantially, and the expectations of the community has grown substantially. And I think when we were looking at our budgets and how we could make sure that we have the staff that we need to manage this community appropriately, we looked to our staff. We made sure that they had the COLA, they had the grid, that we're making sure that they're being remunerated. And so it's hard to say, you know, we need to treat everyone fairly, including ourselves. And so it's an awkward one, for sure. But I think it's one that the federal government put us all in as municipalities across the country. But I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Councillor Reid.
Now, just to clarify, when is that next salary review, that arm's length non-partisan committee, when will that happen? I know it's scheduled for sometime later in our term, right?
Mid-term.
So
spring of this term, but then coming back with a recommendation to follow, which would be a month later,
So
May, June.
as part of the motion, Councillor Nagel, is it to suggest that would occur earlier? Is that? Yeah, I think from my perspective, it would be interesting to have that done sooner than later. Again, this would be a non-administration, non-council committee making a recommendation based on a research that exists in relation to other communities. And so that way we sidestep the issue of this whole awkwardness of the federal tax grab and publicly show that we've done our due diligence. So I would hope that as a friendly amendment, we might be able to move that up sooner than later.
Mr. Devanna?
You know, my concern is you won't be able to act on it. You won't have money in the budget. You won't have tax for it. You know, so I don't like, you know, personally, I don't like just deferring things for the sake of deferring them when you're not really going to be able to budget for it until 2020. And it, you know, to me, the way I look at it, it represents 0.14% of the tax increase or less than $3 per household. And so it's a principled thing if you decide to do it. It's not a financial thing. It's not affecting people in a significant way at $3 per year to provide this, really, which is a form of unloading of taxes from one order of government to another order of government, which is what's happened.
So you're saying we either budget for it now, reconvene the committee for future changes to next year's budget. So it's either in or it's out for this year.
It is for this year, because you're not going to have the money to pay it if you don't approve it. You know, so, you know, my recommendation would be is that you budget for it regardless. Like if you think
So
you're
we
gonna
could
pay
still
it.
budget for it, strike the committee earlier if is what's approved. And then if the committee says, no, we don't think you should have an increase, it's taken away, but it would
So
just
the
go
money
away.
would end up just staying in unappropriated reserve, but it would be taxed for. You could defer allocating it at this time if you wanted to do that. But I don't think you should just expect to accelerate the committee and then expect to pay it in May. It's just not going to happen.
Okay. Everybody understands that? Councilor Badeko.
I guess with that being said, I don't want to penalize everybody else that necessarily is hoping that that money is still in the budget. So I would just personally make it known that I'll be donating my money. I don't plan to take the increase. I will donate it to charity, but I just think that if it does get passed, I would encourage the other councillors that are sitting here that instead of taking the money, then if you're willing to do that, then go put it towards charity of some kind and take the stand that you're not necessarily going to take it, because I won't. But I won't hold it up for everybody else, because your salary would be a big decrease, and I don't want to watch that happen.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, I like what's being proposed in terms of being able to set the money aside, conduct the review earlier, and then have it there. Although, you know, when the budget the size of this town's, I can't believe that you would be able to find that money somewhere in the budget over the course of the year if it was really necessary. But I guess in a perfect world, it should be budgeted appropriately. So I like what's being proposed in terms of being able to set the money aside, conduct that review earlier, and see the outcome from that.
Councillor Flowers?
I'm against the amendment. I think that we are looking after millions of dollars, and Councillor McFadden worded it nicely that we look after everybody else, so we need to make sure things are fair at this level. And like Councillor Nagel said, it's a drop in the bucket, so it's mostly about public pressure, and I think we just need to do the right thing.
The only other thing I would add, I guess, Councillor Wilson, I don't know if you're reaching for your... before you do, Councillor Padeco has pointed out, this really affects me the most, the mayor's salary being the highest, and so I think it's around $1,000 a month less that I would be taking home, which for the same amount of workload that was expected at the beginning of the term and that I've been trying to fulfill, to be paid less for that is somewhat discouraging to me, I guess. Not saying, I'm not taking it lightly, I'm not, I've heard the comments, I've seen the Facebook pages that are accusing me of doing something, raising people's taxes and increasing my salary. Well, this is a hard decision that I would have made as public at large, which I put my name forward before to serve on that committee. I've been through the process. I know what the outcome was at that time. Again, I just think this is a mistake. It looks like we're arguing for our own money. I don't even like this being in the position to do this. I think that we should set up a completely different policy that does not place this on council so squarely like this. Obviously, our budget is ours to approve, and that our salaries will always be within that. But it troubles me that we would get bogged down on $35,000 in a $73 million budget and spend most of our time talking about this instead of moving our community forward. That's what troubles me the most. Regardless of how much I get paid at the end of the day, I do not do this for the money so much, but it would affect me personally. Councillor Wilson.
I'll agree with most of your comments, Mr. Mayor, as well, that I think this is a mostly immaterial drop in the bucket. For me, it's just a simple principle stand. It feels like a slippery slope to me, and so I'm uncomfortable with any vote that has anything to do with my own salary, and I think it should be deferred to a separate committee as we're proposing. So the only thing here for me still to decide is, should it be included in this budget and held based on the committee's decision, or just not included at all? And I guess because of my just blanket protest, I'm going to continue to promote or stick with Councillor Nagel's recommendation of it just not being included at all, and revisited next year after the committee's findings.
One last thing I would ask is, so if this remuneration committee comes back and says that we want the mayor to be paid $200,000 a year and each councillor to be at 100, are you guys prepared to accept that as the way forward, since the separate committee has spoken? So I'm just saying, be careful what the outcome is. Yeah, it was a rhetorical question. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to exclude councillor pay increase due to the tax exemption and approve the budget as amended? Well, that is the motion, right? Or the amendment to, okay, the amendment, sorry, you're right. The amendment to exclude councillor pay due to the exemption, 1/3 tax exemption. In favor of that? Opposed? It's defeated. Okay. Now we're voting on the main motion, which is number 2. in your package that council adopt the 2019-2020 budget, excluding the transit budget as presented. And that was who made that motion first? Councilor McFadden. Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? It's carried. Now we're into rates. Just want to keep firing along. Or council have any questions of administration on the rates? We're talking about sewer and fees. Sewer rates and fees as the first. Oh, sorry, water. I crossed out number 3 already. Okay, all in favor of, oh, sorry, I need a motion from someone. Water rates. Councillor Federico.
I'll move that we approve the water rates and fees as presented.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Sewer rates. Councillor Federico, you want to just keep firing along? Sure. You're still on.
I'll approve that we approve the amended bylaw 16-2016 for sewer rates and fees as presented.
All in favor of that motion? It's carried. And bylaw 8-2018 Schedule B, waste management fees. Councillor Flowers.
Get an update on where that's at since our last discussion.
I can give a brief one. We have that this budget will include fees for waste pickup, if that's what you mean by weekly pickup in specifics. There's no change, so everything will go ahead as last year. So, well, the fees will go up slightly to, maybe I'll just defer to Mr. Devana. I called you Councillor Devana.
This budget assumes that we retain the weekly pickup, and so the rates go up in May to reflect that change in costs for that pickup. So until council makes a final decision on the bi-weekly, this budget includes an increase in the fee.
And you gave me until February to come back to council with a report on Mission Impossible. So that's when I'll have hopefully something to report on that. Okay. Are you moving the waste management fees as presented?
Council amend bylaw 2018 Schedule B waste management fees as presented.
All in favor of that? Carried, thank you. Last one. Service fee increases as proposed and included 2019, 2021. Councillor Reid, all in favor of that? Carried, thank you. Thank you to administration and your team for putting forward that budget. Thought it was a pretty good document overall. Process was good. Thank you. I gotta find my agenda again. Quarter 3, financial report.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me here tonight. Attached to the council report is the Q3 financial report, which consists of key highlights from quarter 3 operating report and the capital report. Administration has 3 recommendations for action. First, the council approves of an additional subsidy of $370,543 to Spray Lakes Sawmills Family Sports Center to cover the society's operating deficit for their prior fiscal year through the town's operating contingency reserve. Second, council approves of $100,000 increase to the Enterprise Resource Planning Capital Project budget, which will be funded by the 2018 operations. And lastly, the council receives the quarter 3 2018 financial report covering January 1st through September 30th, 2018 operations as information. Please refer to the operating and capital report, which supports all key highlights I will briefly cover. As per our operating report, we project to have a $393,000 year-end surplus, which predominantly comes from supplementary property taxes, additional business licenses, and franchise fee revenues. Additional variances that transpired within the town's operating report include fire expenditures expect to be $133,000 under budget in result of reduced overtime and full-time staff. An assessment anticipates collecting an additional $135,000 in property taxes than initially budgeted for. Planning expects $105,000 revenue shortfall in result of an overestimation of stat, non-stat, general account, and amendments. Community grants will be less than budgeted as council did not allocate the full amount initially budgeted. Economic development expects $27,000 more in business licenses revenue. Transit revenue will be $24,000 higher than budget in result of a carry forward from the 2017 MSI grant. Roads Department anticipates to be $213,000 over their expenditure budget. That's in result of unforeseen power utility and additional winter work. As mentioned earlier, Spray Lakes Sawmills Family Sports Center will require an additional $370,543 in result of their cash flow deficit as of their July 31st, 2018 fiscal year end. Administration recommends funding this shortfall from the operating contingency reserve as it meets the purpose of a usage for reserve funds and would remain in accordance with the town's operating agreement with the society. Please refer to the capital report for all updates pertaining to capital projects. Administration would like to make one request to council to fund an additional $100,000 towards the ongoing enterprise resource planning capital project from the $393,000 operating surplus that we expect to have. The additional $100,000 will be used towards training staff, receiving additional consulting from the ERP implementation team to ensure our ERP is operating more efficiently and working within the full capacity that it should be operating at, and to implement the budgeting module Questica. Having Questica operating within the town's ERP will eliminate the risk of manual calculation errors and will significantly reduce the time spent preparing the town's annual budget. Administration has two options for council, and option one, which is recommended by administration, includes the following three. Once again, council approves additional subsidy of the $370,543 to SFC to cover the society's operating deficit for their prior fiscal year through the town's operating contingency reserve. 2, council approves the $100,000 increase to the enterprise resource planning capital project budget, which will be funded by the 2018 operations. And lastly, council receives the Q3 2018 financial results. That completes my presentation. Council, do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you for your report. Always good to see a surplus. Councillor McFadden?
I will move the recommended action, but I did actually have a question in regards to the additional subsidy to the Spray Lake Sawmills. That's covering the operations to date? Is that covering any of the recent
HR? Nope. Okay, that was my question.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Administration? I think it's important that we, especially notwithstanding the Spray Lakes, I think we need to pay for that subsidy, but the Questica, and I'm really looking forward to the changes that we'll make in streamlining our financial department. So, in full support of administration's recommendations. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just two clarification questions on the Spray Lakes part of things. The 370, is that over and above the projected operational losses for this year? Is that in addition to? I'm not quite sure from the budget.
It's part of the overall.
Okay.
It's their Q3, but
It's in,
I got it. So this is 2018, right?
Right.
So it's,
Yep, thank you.
we had budgeted 625,000 for the
Right.
2018 up to, and this is up to their year end is July 31st. So it's to cover actually the previous year, 2017 and 2018, but it hits our 2018 year. So it's on top of the 625.
It's on top of the 625.
Yes.
So it's not just a timing difference, it's an actual over.
Yep. Yeah, their
expenditure.
year
Okay.
end is July 31st, so that's what
Yep.
their actual loss was.
Okay. And then is it possible to elaborate just a little bit more on the $100,000 for the resource planning system, the
Questica?
Questica, it sounds interesting. I'm just wondering, do we have any idea how much is being spent on the Questica and how much is spent on the other aspect there, the staff training? Yes, thank you. Yeah.
okay, so we'll start with the Questica. So we figure that the Questica for the module and the training is about 40,000 of the 100,000. Both myself and our new senior manager and our manager of finance want to modernize our budgeting system. I think there is significant opportunity for savings in the amount of time that it takes us to do both the budget, but this tool also allows us to forecast into the future, and it also allows us to do what-if scenarios for what if this happened, we could do this, and what if this happened, we could do that. And so, you know, I'm very, very supportive of us spending that money. And then when you bring in a new financial system like Diamond, for us to be able to fully utilize the system, we need to get our staff properly trained, and we have to get the modules working the way we would like them to work. And so the additional 60,000 is for that. And there are also significant savings that can accrue in the finance department if we make these investments. So I'm very, very supportive of this move.
Thank you. They sound very important. Yes, I agreed with some of our other budget additions on that, I guess in that aspect as well. Thanks for breaking it out. Appreciate it.
And it's not our intention to raise taxes, it's our intention to use the savings from last year to pay for it.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Other comments? Okay. They're all inclusive in your motion? Whoever put that was Councillor McFadden, right? First one? Oh, we need 3 motions? Okay. So we're on the first one. The Spray Lakes subsidy. All those in favor? It's carried, thank you. Moving on to the 100,000 for the financial enterprise, we're just going to call it ERP for Questica. Councillor Wilson, do you want to do that?
I'm sure I'll do that as well.
Okay. All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. And lastly, receiving the Q3 financial report as information. Councillor Reid, all in favor of that? Carried, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Hanging out right till the end. Motions on notice? I don't think we have any motions on notice, do we? We have notices of, or no, we do. That's what you have. One of those. Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
All right, not a lot of suspense. We already talked about it, but My official NOM is, in the interest of increasing future transparency and public accountability, I move that administration be directed to implement a new council voting structure to future budgets, namely that all contested line items are formally voted upon and that the results of those votes are clearly displayed within the finished budget and ideally on the Cochrane.ca website alongside the posted budget. I guess I would just add that this is in no way a condemnation of our current budget process. I thought it was pretty great this year and bring a big improvement over last year. I just think this would add that next piece that we really need with doing formalized votes with it.
Okay, great. That'll be coming back in January? Okay. Anybody else have anything? No? Okay. Mayor's reports. Yeah, extremely busy couple of weeks. Councilor Reid's given me the 2-minute warning already. Obviously, Cochrane's got a lot going on. It's actually pretty exciting times. Obviously, with the holiday season approaching and that, there's been a lot of Christmas-themed things that I've been attending. But some of them, the highlights here, CRAS, the Regional Air Quality Monitoring, Air Zone Monitoring. You'll notice a little trailer in Mitford Park. Well, actually, I think it's a truck. That is now monitoring the air quality right there in Cochrane. So you can go online to cras.ca, and Cochrane now has a little drop-down menu, and you can see the air quality in Cochrane at all times. So last year during our fires, you'd be able to go down and see the air quality is a 5 or whatever. And so I made jokes at the presentation that 2, we were very low. 2 is a bad mark, but it's not. 2 is good. 1 is even better. So we've been hovering around a 2 all the time, so a low number is good. They placed it there kind of strategically for prevailing winds coming out of wherever, and it's town land and there's power there. So if you see that or get questions in the community about what that truck is, that's what it is. Councilor Reid, I think you'll talk about the elevator. Okay. I had an opportunity to sit down with our MP, Blake Richards. Always good to catch up with Blake. He seems to be everywhere that I am. But this time we actually got some time together just for our community. So he gave me some tips on how to work and with the federal government and with the upcoming election next year for federal parties. Attended the Chamber Christmas party. That was good to see everybody out there. Town of Cochrane Christmas party. I just wanted to say thank you to the HR department and the organizing committee for a really good party. It was great to see over 200 staff and guests at the party and well represented by council. So thank you all for that. I think it was a good, I'm taking it as a good sign of the times that staff are engaged and want to participate in functions such as this, whereas we've just seen, I think, a market improvement, so that's good to see. Mr. Devanna and I visited all the town departments and delivered some holiday cheer last week, some oranges and a couple of treats to, I think we made 7 stops and an arrest in there at the same time. Thank you, Councillor Federico, for the United Way arrest. Those cuffs were tight. I got roughed up more, I think, than anyone else in the community. And I think all of my, I've got one, the Mayor of Airdrie is going to pay me this week at the CMRB, and I will have the cash for you for my outstanding balance there. And I got out of jail without even paying my bill yet. So that was good. So yeah, it was interesting and fun to go around to all the town departments. And I'd actually, every year I've said this, every year, all of them won. Outside of this one, I'd like to do that more often. I think it's good to get down to the departments and see where everybody's working and what they're doing. So that's my New Year's resolution for next year. CMRB, continue meeting there. The CMRB Land Use Committee met last week. The CMRB Servicing Committee met last week. I spent a whole day on CMRB, and then we had a speaker come in the evening. It was Peter Calthorpe from, I think he's from San Francisco, I want to say. Anyways, from the States, renowned planner for in the world, I think globally. He spoke about China as one of his extreme cases of how development has gone awry in the world. And he had some very good points. So the CMRB are bringing in a series of speakers over the next few months so that we can hear from different sources to, as we vision and start to create a regional plan. So I thought that was a really good way to kick that off. Last week I was in Ranch View School at grade 6. Saw your daughter, Councillor Federico. She's a spitting image of her mother. All the positive qualities. And so that was good to speak to the grade 6s with the governing. They're taking government in school right now. So they're, and of course tomorrow we have our mock council where they're coming, I think it's Manitowoc coming tomorrow, grade 6s. So lots of kids, which was always fun. They grilled me on biweekly pickup. And they were angry that there was actually a group against biweekly pickup, which I found quite funny. Last week, too, I had lunch with the Banff and Canmore mayors, where we talked again about this heavy rail commuter transit system. The press release, the long-awaited press release that I've been trying to keep caps on, but telling everybody about, is we're going to host it in Cochrane on the Esso Bulk Station lands. I think that would be appropriate for a transit, obviously, given tonight's agenda. But also, I'm trying to take the pressure off of Banff and Canmore. They have some hang-ups around federal and provincial parks in their area, and what some of these decisions will have on their communities. So I said, well, we'll do it and put all the attention on Cochrane. So I think that's going to be good. So that'll be in January. And then we continue to plan for this mid-sized cities mayor's caucus, and it's growing every week. It seems there's more and more. I think we have over 50 delegates now that are coming from it's January 30th and 31st. You'll get an invite. We've got kind of a rough agenda set now. We've got confirmation from Minister Anderson from Municipal Affairs. He will be attending and speaking on the first day. And we've heard back from the leader of the Alberta Party, I believe, and waiting for the other 3 party leaders to confirm, but we have letters out to all of them. So that will be forthcoming in the new year, I'm sure. So that, in a nutshell, other than wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and however you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a good break. I'm looking forward to some time off, having my daughter back home and just turning my phone upside down, maybe even putting it underwater for a couple of weeks, and turning off social media and focusing on the things that matter, and that's celebrating with your family. So, happy holidays. Who wants to follow up with a councillor's report? Councillor Reid, your light's flashing.
It is.
And it matches either light matches your suit.
Thank you. Just briefly, in the essence of time, for council, the Spray Lake Sawmill Family Support Center had its AGM. I have copies of their annual report and their audited statements that I'll leave with Mr. Devanna so that everybody can have a chance to look through that. As the mayor has indicated, there was a ceremony recognizing the installation of the elevator, which will accommodate all of our patrons, and particularly the seniors on the bow. It's at that end of the building, and it's a great addition, something that was overdue. The interim executive director and general manager is doing a great job, Adrian, and I have a report here as well that I will leave with the rest of this material. But I think for the most part, things are moving along really well, and the transition has been smooth.
It's good to hear. Great. Anyone else get up to anything over the last couple of weeks? No? Councillor Flowers.
I just wanted to say I've been sick for 2 weeks and I missed all the parties, but next year. I wanted to say thank you to those that sat on the Transit Committee, because I don't think you got enough recognition for all the work that you did leading up to tonight's decision. And I know Councillor McFadden and Federico and Mayor Janung, you've done a lot of work, a lot of hours, and listened to a lot of people. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, thanks for that. Councillor McFadden?
the spirit of like shout outs, so I did want to give a shout out to Councillor Federico for her United Way jail. I know you created that out of nothing at the last minute, or however you did it, but that found me in handcuffs with Susan.
That's why she's sick.
No, it wasn't. Anyway, but I don't know. Thank you for going above and beyond on that. That was really great. And it's really matching the season. I'm so proud of our community right now, and you see so many Christmas initiatives where everybody's kind of stepping up to help their neighbors. So certainly a community I'm proud of, but thanks for going the extra mile this year. It's been great working with everybody this year, and I know we'll accomplish even more in 2019. So enjoy the season, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's it? Okay. That's a wrap.
Merry Christmas to you all. I will be heading out. Merry Christmas.